Commissioner Johnny Arvaiz has to be excused. Commissioner Raul Ugalde. Commissioner Larry Lavalina.
Here.
And Commissioner Ana Gabriela Villarreal.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, you do have quorum.
Thank you. Can we have a motion to excuse Commissioner Narvaez?
So move.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Chairman, that would be all the commissioners, only Mr. Narvaez.
Well, Mr. Narvaez called in. Oh, and I believe that, no, all the commissioners, because the other, I know Flores said he couldn't make the meeting. And Narvaez, now I don't know if Ugalde is going to join us later, but I guess the motion would be to excuse all of the commissioners. So that would be the motion to excuse the three absent commissioners.
So move.
All right, we have a second. So all those who are not in favor signify by saying aye. None heard, motion carries. The next item is citizens' comments. Kirby, we'll give it about a minute and see what you got.
Yes, sir, that would be good. And while we're doing that, if I can just make a little announcement, as we normally do. There is about a 1 minute lag between what's being shown here and what's being broadcast on the city Spectrum channel 1300 and on the website for the city. So if we can just keep that in mind when we're asking for public comment. Also, we've invited the engineers this time through the app to test it out. We're going to try out this way. We've tested all their audio and video. We've asked them to keep their audio muted and their video off until they're called for by you during the public hearing portion of each item. And with that said, if we can also ask the commissioners to keep themselves muted. If you forget, I might mute you. That's only just to preserve audio quality as best we can. Even if you can't hear it, sometimes it creates feedback that makes it difficult to hear. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Okay. Is there anybody on the line for public comments?
We have not received any public comment, but we will alert you if we do.
All right, I'll give it another 10 seconds. Okay. We're moving on to item number 4, consideration of approval of the minutes of the meeting of March the 4th, 2021.
So move.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
We have a second. All those who are not in favor of the motion to approve the minutes of March the 4th, 2021, signify by saying aye. None heard, motion carries.
It was Commissioner Lugo who provided the second. And if you can help us by stating your name when you provide a second, that's very helpful. Thank you. A motion and a second.
Item number 5, staff presentation is a presentation by the building department staff on the proposed ordinance regarding dead storage parking lots, dealing with time limitations of compliance, paving requirements, and other related matters. All right, sir.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon, and commission members, good afternoon. Arturo Garcia from Building Department. Mr. Simon, can you allow me to share my screen real quick? And I know that Mr. Ramon Chavez from Engineering is also joining me, and he'll be talking the specifics on the technical specs for the alternatives that we are proposing to provide industrial developments with parking alternatives.
Yes, just 1 second, Mr. Garcia.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, anyway, you could send that to me by email. We have the presenter disabled.
Yeah, I think we have separate presentations, myself and Mr. Chavez, so.
Could you both send that to me?
Sent over. Did you get it?
No, how large is that presentation?
I don't know, Kirby. I just closed it right now.
Okay. What I'll ask is that, Rafa, can you, well, let's see.
Well, let me start off basically while you work on it. Well, basically, Mr. Chairman and Commission members, basically, we're trying to bring an alternative that council requested related to industrial parking lots. We've had a significant issue related to enforcement on the paving of a lot of these lots out there. We do have a predominance of industrial-related activities that are not abiding by the current ordinance of providing concrete or asphalt. And we have some commercial areas like parking lots related to auto sales places and other auto mechanic shops and storage yards that aren't paved. The current amendment that we're seeking for the ordinance, which is in the Land Development Code under 24.78 parking requirements, is basically we're adding some alternatives and deleting that storage option, making a definition for industrial use of those parking lots, defining operational area. We're basically categorizing and focusing just in industrial areas where we have the significant issue, where we have a lot of unpaved parking lots causing not only damage to the right of way, but pollution and erosion control issues for us on the right of way. So with those alternatives, were you able to get it yet, Kirby?
No, it looks like it's too large to send through. Have Amanda coming over with a flash drive to get that.
Well, I mean, you could share it, would be easier. I mean,
Unfortunately, it's disabled for this presentation. Ramon, have you tried sending yours?
Let me do that.
Arturo, can you explain what the current code calls for?
yes, sir. Just as soon as I can just let me just save it until it's done.
Yeah, we have Ramon's up. Why don't we do that first? Ramon?
Okay, let me see. Is that what I sent you, Kirby?
Yes.
Hold on. Let me see. Can you go to the last slide? Okay. Why don't you do this one?
You know, before we go on with Ramon's presentation, I think commission members and Larry asked Arturo, can you go ahead and tell us what the current ordinance is so that all the commission members know what it is? And then I guess briefly go over the points that you're looking to change, and then we can go into the specs of what Ramon has put together here and cost analysis and stuff like that. But let's have, first of all, what is the current ordinance? And just in a brief overview, and then what are the proposed changes?
Yes, sir. Let me just, I thought Kirby was going to let me share the presentation. That's why, sir. Sorry.
Well, it's on Kirby. Kirby's equipment is no good.
Oh, Mr. Garcia, that's why we asked you to send the presentation, so we'd have it ready.
Last time we had issues, sir. So the basic presentation right now that I had basically for you was basically, in fact, let me see if I can do this. Oh, no, I can't show it. It's basically Land Development Code, sir. It's 24-78. It requires and provides just two alternatives for current parking lot paving. It's basically concrete or asphalt paving for all industrial parking lot. And that cost measure through our enforcement measures initially in September of, and I'm going to give you a quick little history on it. September 3rd of 2009, City Council motion to basically remove the dead storage option, which provided for caliche mixture so that there could be dead storage. Some issues that developed back then was that there was not sufficient management on their part related to, is that it, Kirby? Oh, related to enforcement, and we were having issues with dust control, and we were getting citizens complain on items going on the right of way. Subsequently to that, we prepared an enforcement plan to management, from our side, which management approved. And we identified about 80 non-compliant businesses that did not have proper parking lots paved or concreted with asphalt. So we gave them warnings. There was a plan established to basically provide them a time frame for them to get into compliance. And during that time frame, if you recall, last year, it was around the January, March, February, March timeframe when we started doing this enforcement effort. COVID hit March 2020, right? So from that point forward, we were providing businesses an opportunity, and there was some requests by the private sector that were being identified in this enforcement action to see if there could be potential for different alternatives because of the cost factor related to concrete and asphalt paving, so they could get compliant. And with the current economic conditions that were last year, they found it very difficult to be able to meet the standard. So with that, it subsequently then went to council around August 3 of 2020 last year. And council basically directed staff to start working on alternatives to provide for this so we could keep the industry competitive and the port competitive, and to also continue mitigating the dust, debris, and nuisance issues at the same time. So as of subsequently, they issued a moratorium on any issuance of citations and violations. So we're now at this point to where we have the current ordinance, which basically provides for those two current options, and council's direction to eliminate the dead storage option. So we worked and had subsequent meetings with a small sector of the community, of the industry sector related to that, focusing on the industrial area, not necessarily the commercial areas where you have smaller shopping centers. That the paving requirement remains the same for them, for the small commercial parking areas. We are focusing our attention on the industrial areas, the M1 and the M2 zones, which have significant issues with erosion and trailers moving in tracks, and the industrial parks getting filled with dirt, causing damage to the right of way and causing issues related to cleanup of the right of way. So with that, we brought up the options with which Mr. Chavez has there. We have about we still maintain the first two options. For we divided the operational area. In other words, we're considering the operational area of the parking lot. So the customer and the employee parking lot remain the same. So any industrial area that has an acre or more of operational parking has the ability to provide and request these exemptions. Anything under that 1 acre of operational area for parking trucks or maneuvering trucks still needs to meet the requirements of the current ordinance, which is asphalt and concrete. Anything above that, which is basically spillover parking or whatever you might want to call it, can be used to save that company some money, especially since a lot of the companies have a lot of trucks or trailers that they need to park, and to remain competitive, we provided these alternatives. I'll let Mr. Chavez discuss those alternatives. I hope that answered your question, Mr. Molina.
Yes.
Okay, sir. Mr. Chavez, you got the alternatives. I don't know if
Thank
you
you,
can show
Kirby. If you can please show the table with some of the alternate, the other table, yes, with the cost. So first of all, good afternoon, Chairman and members of the Commission. I'm Ramon Chavez, a city engineer. As Arturo mentioned, we've been directed by City Council to provide some alternatives to the trucking industry as it relates to these industrial parking lots. Some of the things that we did here at our department was come up with some estimated costs to provide an idea of what we are looking at. As you can see from the top to the bottom, we have developed and created several exhibits for the different types of cross sections as it relates to these materials. So starting with the first one, which is one of the accepted ones at this point, but the most expensive one, going with concrete. That cross section is looking at 7 inches of reinforced concrete with flex base, asphalt, a hot mix, which is approximately 266,000, and these are costs per acre. So those are the only two alternatives that at this point were being approved. After that, we started looking at some options, and we came up with alternative C through F. The C being crushed concrete, and that estimated cost per acre is 217,000. So you're already looking at a difference of $50,000 in savings per acre. Then, as we move on with other alternatives, we looked at oversized rock at an estimated cost of 197,000, and another reduction in cost of about $70,000. We included millings in there. Millings are maybe hard to get around this area, but we didn't want to leave that option out. I know as previously as the Building Development Services Director, I know I would get a lot of requests from contractors to use millings. So there may be people out there that may have these materials, and so that's for that same reason we don't want to leave them out, although they may be hard to get. And that cost per acre, you'll be looking at 192,000. The last and most inexpensive alternative is just having your caliche base and applying some prime coat, which we call MC30, the technical stuff, and it's just basically an oil and emulsion. Yes, that you would have to apply on these. Looking at exhibits, can you just show some of the notes, please, Kirby? Can you just go? Thank you. Looking at some of these things that will have to be required. Yes, sir. I thought somebody had a question. Looking at the notes, I mean, there's certain criteria that have to be followed. For example, on the plans showing the finished grade, the plan and drainage patterns, that would help us identify the runoff for the when we have these heavy rains. Again, and that will have to be contained within the property or as indicated on the recorded plat. Sometimes some of these properties have maintenance and monitoring agreements, so we will definitely be looking at all of that. We also provide in the ordinance for alternate designs. As long as they're by a licensed professional engineer, they may submit that information for review and approval. And there's other innovative ideas out there that I didn't get too much into, but again, we will consider some of these liquefied cement systems that you can inject into the ground. You scarify the ground, mix the solution with the soil, and you create this the soil stabilization. So that could be permitted as well. Again, you would have to have good soil conditions, and we're looking at having PIs less than 20 in order to consider some of these. And lastly, but one of the most important ones, can you just, okay, scroll down. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Kirby. That's fine. These are some of the most important things that anybody that chooses to go with alternatives from C to F, again, they're gonna have to comply. The closer you get to using some of these from C to F, the more maintenance that it's going to require. So that's going to fall on the property owner, and they're always going to have to comply with the stormwater management ordinance and with erosion control and sediment control. So that's going to be very important, and that's going to be part of the enforcement that will have to take place from our inspectors. Again, these are going to require additional maintenance. We also will be requiring for the base to be compacted, and that's just to protect the investment of the property owner, so that these materials be tested. So in a nutshell, these are the alternatives that we are looking at providing.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner, one of the primary issues is we put an item on the ordinance itself to provide for alternatives. So we haven't some sort of alternative out there that we don't know about it, that it's innovative, or I mean, we're willing to take on those issues and review them, and as long as they meet minimum standards, the building official will approve them too. So we're trying to be as innovative as we can and provide as many alternatives to reduce that cost and keep the port competitive.
Very good. I got a couple of questions for Ramon. The alternatives where you have crushed concrete or you have oversized rock and stone, are these parking lots going to require a border, a curb, or how are you going to contain this material within the property?
So those are the part of the things that the building department will be reviewing, again, to control some of these materials, and there'll be alternatives, whether it be a curb. We could probably also approve and recommend to use silt fencing. And again, these are going to be depending on what option property owners choose to go with. The maintenance requirements may increase a little bit as well.
Yeah, but I would recommend that we do add, like on crushed concrete, oversized rock, whatever it's going to take to contain it. I think to leave it open-ended for an engineer to design, everybody needs to know up front that this is just not take crushed concrete, throw it out on the ground, and you're done, because we all know that trucks rolling, all trucks carry double wheels, and you put crushed concrete, oversized rocks, they're going to get stuck in the wheelbase, and when they get out to the street, they're going to throw all this material out. So there's the other thing I was going to recommend to you is if you use those methods, crushed concrete or oversized rock, that perhaps before we get to the pad, because you are going to create an entrance, a concrete entrance into each property, as these trucks are going to exit, that you put maybe like a cattle guard or something to shake out these rocks. Because otherwise we're going to be damaging the street right away coming off of those areas.
Yes, sir. Those are some good comments, sir, that we'll incorporate. I'll discuss with Mr. Chavez so we can incorporate in the specs.
I agree with that, Mr. Chairman, as well. We can take a look at those issues.
Yeah, I think you did. I think the one that you mentioned last, which is really the scarification of the ground and the injection of a slurry concrete, is a really good method, because it produces soil that is rock hard, and it's very easy to do that kind of a process. But I think you should add that one on these particular pavement alternatives that you have too. That's a good one. I know there's companies that do this, and it's just a matter of you trying to figure out is it cost effective or not. I don't know at this point.
If I may, sir.
Yes.
This is Commissioner Dominguez.
Chairman,
One of the,
sorry, George.
George, go ahead.
one of the items that we're forgetting is that we're coming out of pandemia, and a lot of the businesses right now, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, they're hurt. They've been having problems throughout the years, not only with the incomes, but also handling their own businesses. Now we come here and we try to throw this at them at this particular time. I think it's going to affect the business community adversely. I would say that this is my recommendation, that we send a moratorium back to City Council with the idea to bring this back within 1 year. I feel that some of the exhibits that are before us are really, really good, but they're very, very expensive. The preparation of the subsoil, if there's a lot of clay in there, in order to bring it below the 20 pi, they need to be mixed with lime or totally removed. Now, some of the areas they have so much clay, Mr. Chairman, that they might even have to go in and remove up to 4 feet of the subsoil in order to comply with the recommendations. So I agree that we need to do this, and that photo that we have in front of us, I mean, it's something that doesn't happen very often in Laredo. And I know that it needs to be taken care of, but I think this is not the right time.
Why don't we do this, Jorge? I know that the ordinance had a 1 year period to get compliant.
Yes, sir.
Maybe with what you're saying, and I'm going to throw this out based on some of the comments, maybe we should move that 1 year period to maybe 2 years or even 3. I don't know, guys. I'm just throwing that number out.
And
That's a point of discussion.
Mr. Chairman, Arturo from Building, that's a good recommendation for us, sir. We were seeking some guidance from the commission on that. Our estimate was, we put 1 year on it, but if the commission is recommending otherwise, we'd like that input to be able to provide counsel on that. So I think it's a very good comment, Mr. Dominguez.
Arturo, I love the idea, and I think the exhibits that Mr. Chavez brought before us, they're good. I mean, that would be beautiful if we can get to comply with that. But I think all the commission should agree, and even members of the City of Laredo staff, that this is not the right time. As a matter of fact, we want to help the economy, and I think we should move it as Mr. Chairman mentioned, for 3 years. Within 3 years, we should bring it back and try to see how we can enforce it. But I think a recommendation would be to add time to the moratorium for an additional 3 years. As far as the date, it would be up to the
George, I wasn't talking about a moratorium. I was talking about
an
letting this thing
extension.
go forth, but just instead of making it a 1 year compliance, give it 3 years.
Yes,
You know,
I agree with you.
So that
I
as
agree with you.
business picks up, business will continue with, let's say, they got 3 years to make the compliance. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's perfect.
If we don't, we're all hoping obviously that this COVID stuff and, doesn't, flare up on us again and cause problems. But I think if we give this a 3-year compliance as a recommendation from us, that at least it can go forth and, they can still continue working on little aspects of the ordinance that may need, whatever tweaking or whatever. But this is something that I'll tell you is, when I was the building department director, is a big problem that we had, and it's been a problem since the ordinance was written. But it has been something that I always said, I just can't see throwing $1 million on the ground. So this is why these alternatives, are something that is badly needed, we need compliance of some kind, because there was damage in different areas to a lot of the streets. But at the same time, it's not the right time to.
Mr. Chairman, if I may reflect a little bit historically, when the initial ordinance came up in 1990, basically, well, going back, I'll talk about the slide on there too right now, but initially they did provide for a percentage. So they provided way back then, 5 years, when they initially required concrete and asphalt at 25% minimum measures. So if you do want to extend, let's say 2 or 3 years, we would recommend that it be in, maybe if you say 3 years, well, you got to get 30% done per year at least, or to that extent, so that we can slowly see improvements. So I would recommend that to the commission and to council. And then Kirby, could you go back to that slide that you were showing real quick? In August 3rd of last year, council did issue that moratorium for that same fact that you're mentioning, Commissioner Dominguez. So they did issue a moratorium. They didn't specifically specify much, but we wanted to start working on those alternatives so we could have them already working and provide everybody, because people are asking, hey, what are the alternatives I can use? So
What happened, Arturo, if I may, real quick, you're mentioning about 30% of the compliance, and I think that at this particular time, speaking about percentage, it's like going out on a limb. I would agree with that temporary moratorium to be extended from the beginning of the year of 2021 for 3 additional years, or an extension, as Erasmo was saying, because if we're going to try to do 30%, we're still going to impact the business community. And I don't think that's right. I mean, you're going to go ahead and start putting pressure on this community, and it's just not the right time. And I know that I would probably send a recommendation to City Council that we extend from January of 2021 for 3 years for to put a temporary moratorium on the issuance of citations in violation of the paving ordinance. See, the debt storage as per se. So if the members of this commission agree, then I think that would be the best.
Commissioner Dua.
Let me go ahead and recognize Commissioner Dueñas. I think he had a comment that he wanted to share with us.
Sí, mira, yo estoy en la industria del import-export y se me hace muy gravoso poner esta ordenanza en un año. Si ustedes ven los números estamos hablando de 400,000 a $500,000 por acre. Eso nos va a encarecer mucho la construcción de bodegas, de warehouses, de negocios que son los que producen. La tierra como tal, el pavimentar el piso como tal, no produce nada. ¿Me explico? Entonces, invertir el dinero en warehouse, en edificios, en algo que pueda generar riqueza, nos puede ayudar a ir pavimentando, a ir poniendo concreto, porque cada quien tiene diferentes proyectos. Si ponemos el concreto hidráulico, como bien lo sabe Ramón Chávez, depende también del espesor. ¿Cuánto espesor? Aquí me estás poniendo un promedio de $9-10 por pie cuadrado, pero si es un espesor más fuerte para carga pesada, es mucho más caro. Cada quien en su negocio va a ver qué necesidad tiene, si es carga ligera, carga pesada, si no la necesita. Lo que sí estoy de acuerdo es que este lodazal no se puede permitir, ¿verdad? Pero entonces ahí ya estaría el funcionamiento también de la ciudad, de ver qué tipo de predios, qué tipo de terrenos, de yardas afectan las calles, y no sé, quizás una multita o algo, pero sí dar el tiempo de los 3 años a que se refiere mi compañero presidente y mi compañero Jorge. Es bastante gravosa la inversión, es bastante gravosa la inversión, y creo que Laredo está para producir. La industria de import-export está repuntando, estamos ya emparejándonos, y si nos dan 3 años, creo que estaríamos muy bien ya en términos generales en todo. Ahora hay gente que es mucho dinero, gente que no tiene este tipo de negocios, que tiene negocios de reparación de trailers, o sea, es mucho dinero, $500,000 por acre para que ellos arreglen sus patios. Pero bueno, me uno a los 3 años de mis compañeros porque la recuperación no es fácil. Gracias ciudad, gracias por el trabajo que hacen. Muy buena investigación, Ramón. Y pues ese es mi punto de vista, Chairman.
Okay, gracias.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just provide you a quick comment. I know that, thank you, Mr. Dueñas, for the comment, and we'll definitely take it into account. The concern that I had expressed to council in one of the meetings when we were discussing this was that, you know, we are talking about the non-compliant businesses. So looking at I kind of did a quick number after we had spoken, Mr. Chairman, we had spoken about 1,000 warehouses that our environmental review division reviews, and they're typically the ones that are out there doing the inspections and come on in and then report them in. They were mentioning that about almost 30% of the non-compliant businesses are out there that are not paving their parking lots. Looking at it from a perspective, you have 70% of the businesses being compliant, so it's technically almost a competitive disadvantage that all these compliant businesses are meeting the compliant, and now you have somebody that's not compliant and putting that money into their business instead of meeting compliance measures that the city has. So just kind of throwing that out there to the mix of the conversation, but just to discuss, we are talking about the non-compliant businesses.
Right. Okay.
Commissioner, do I have a question?
Go ahead.
Arturo, if we don't go forward with this or the way we're trying to plan to do this, or at least the presentation, for the businesses that, let's say, are able to move forward, then does that mean they would be now restricted to only what is in the code right now?
Yes, correct. Right now, the code, the code says asphalt or concrete. That's your only 2 choices. That's it. So you don't have any alternatives. And what we're bringing here is, I really like the recommendation that the commissioner had related to providing. We're recommending 1 year, right? But we want the input from the commission. 3 years to implement, to allow businesses to be able to meet the standard or the new standards. It's good for us. I mean, I don't see any issue from our side in terms of recommending that also. Yes, we would strongly still recommend moving forward this with council because of the fact that now you're providing all these additional alternatives. Like you just mentioned, Commissioner, there's only two right now, and they're $450,000 and about $300,000 for the two options. The other options lower that cost significantly, and provide for those alternatives for these businesses that are currently non-compliant.
Right, that's what I'm kind of gathering from the presentation. I think I understand the 1 year thing. I think that might be too soon, but definitely I still feel that we should give more options to the businesses, and with the 3 year, if that's a possible recommendation. I don't know what the other commissioners think, but I think we should add these changes for those businesses that are ready to move forward. It gives them the options to do a more cost-effective paving, and also if we include the language of 3 years, that even helps everybody else. I just, my concern is just stopping it on its track today and then it not getting changed, and then we're stuck with two options, and then businesses now that want to move forward are stuck with just the two options that are, as we've seen right now on the spreadsheet, are as significantly a lot more expensive.
And that's correct, Commissioner. If the moratorium ends tomorrow, if council decides to end it tomorrow, then I'm going to be enforcing asphalt or concrete. And I have no other choice.
Commissioner Villarreal, just a reminder that this is just a staff presentation. They're just taking input to go to the next step,
Right.
which is council. So we don't need a motion on this. And what I'm hearing is the commissioners are recommending 3 years and staff's agreeing. Are there any other comments so that we can move on?
May I make some comments?
Yes, go ahead, Larry.
I was there when the original ordinance was passed, and I would even agree to amend it back to what it used to be, where you had the combination of the caliche with the asphalt, and you had concrete in certain areas where you would store the trailers. I think it worked at the time. I'm not sure where the complaints came from that you mentioned when the council made the changes. If you go out into the areas that are currently being developed, and you've got to go beyond the city limits, you got to open your eyes and see what's going on, and you see these very same people that are going outside of the city limits because the city doesn't have an agreement with the county to create jurisdiction by the city in the ETJ. And you can do that. You can make an agreement between the city and the county to allow the city to go into the ETJ to enforce requirements that the city uses in building development. And the real competition, or the lack of competition, is the fact that you're putting companies like Landstar out on 3338. Go out and look at it. You drive down Tiendas Road, you go past Peñitas, you turn left, and there's a 50-acre development without asphalt, without anything. You go down 83, and you have all of those tractor trailers that are parked, and they're parked on the dirt. And then you have, further up you go, and you have that company Forza. All those people are moving outside of the city limits, where the city loses the base for taxes, and they unfairly compete with the people that you're forcing to pay and to do concrete. And so even if you pass the alternative that you're suggesting, the unfair competition is still going to exist because you're not addressing what's happening in the county. And as this continues, you're going to see more migration by these warehouses out to the areas where they're not required to do anything other than the minimum. And some of these other people are obviously looking at those things. And we're having this discussion and we're not even mentioning them. So I think we're looking at half of the problem and trying to put a Band-Aid on it when the problem is much bigger. If in fact you're trying to create a level playing field for everybody in the industry.
Mr. Walita, if I may address that, yes, we are aware of what you just mentioned. We're just trying to meet council's directive to bring alternatives to the current parking lot issue with non-compliance.
I understand, but you can't close your eyes. I'm in favor of doing the alternative to the ordinance, but I suggest that staff get on the ball and start working with the county. I mean, there is a county planning agency or department. Rafael used to work there. There is communication between the mayor and the judge. I mean, so you can easily work an interlocal agreement, and it's allowed under state law to happen. I know because I have the same kind of interlocal agreement in LaSalle County with the city of Cotula. And my inspectors go out into the county in the city's ETJ, and we enforce the city's building codes. I mean, it's an easy fix, but our passing this ordinance tonight or recommending it or whatever we're going to do, I'm in favor of what is being suggested, 2 years, 3 years, because I think the people inside the city limits are facing unfair competition from the uncontrolled development that is taking place outside the city limits. And if you want pictures, I can give you as many pictures as you want.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Anybody else on the commission have anything to add?
Sí, Chairman, Dueñas otra vez.
Okay.
Arturo y Ramón y Kirby, a mí sí me gustaría que consideraran y que hicieran números. Un acre de tierra industrial está sobre $200,000. Si lo vas a poner con cemento hidráulico, está en $600,000. Si lo vas a poner con pavimento, con asfalto, está en $400,000. Ese mismo acre en los botines, como decía Larry, en fuerza, es un acre de $50,000 y no me obligas a ponerle el piso. Ese mismo acre en McAllen vale $80,000 a $120,000. Estaríamos encareciendo mucho la ciudad y sí se irían empresas a ponerse en otro lado, a crecer en Nixon, en FAR, en McAllen. No estoy queriendo golpear a la ciudad, o sea, solamente es mi punto de vista de que estamos poniendo muy cara la tierra. Si nosotros les damos oportunidad de que lo asimilen en 3 años, quizá podamos hacer mejor. Pero sí estoy viendo como Larry el sentido de que ve un ojo en los botines y hay muchos acres allá. 50 acres a $200,000, $300,000 nada más de piso. Estás hablando de $15 millones, Arturo. Entonces tenemos que ir reconsiderando esto. No por beneficiar un proyecto perjudiquemos el crecimiento y el desarrollo de la ciudad. Necesitamos que las bodegas sigan creciendo, que las industrias sigan viniendo, ¿verdad? Pero estamos poniendo cara a la tierra. Entonces, así estaríamos hablando de un promedio de $500,000 un acre. Es muchísimo dinero para que tú inicies un negocio. Y no necesitas un acre, necesitas 2 o 4 o 6 o 10. Estamos tendiendo bodegas ya de 300,000 pies, de 250,000 pies, que no se habían visto. Qué bueno, bendito Dios que sigan viniendo más. Entonces, yo sí me gustaría que recapacitaran, vieran los números, y sí los números comparativos con el condado, que son las afueras de la ciudad, y con otras ciudades, nos dejan muy fuera de competencia a Laredo. Gracias, gracias, Ramón, gracias, Mr. Chairman. Gracias, Kirby. Thank you.
Okay. I think, Arturo, I think you've heard comments from the commission.
Very good comment, sir.
I think the comments, Larry brought out a very, very good comment that if we're not careful with this thing and you don't have an agreement with the county worked out, you're going to see you might see new developments going out outside the city limits. And that's already, you have unfair competition. I realize you have unfair competition with 30% of your businesses are not in compliance. But I think there is some consensus about a 3-year period. But I think the more important thing, like Larry mentioned, is that we have an interlocal agreement with Webb County to follow some kind of standards that can be enforced by the county or the city within the 5-mile ETJ. I mean, we're playing a game here. We have a 5-mile ETJ, so we start getting that to enforce, what's going to happen? They're going to go half a mile further. You're outside. So it's a balancing act, but at least we gotta start somewhere. If we can have that 5 mile ETJ, which is already in the building code that you guys can do, I think it's something that's also needs to go hand in hand with this presentation tonight.
Okay, yes, sir. Thank you for your comments, Commission.
All right, and I think we've had enough discussion on this particular item. I think you've had enough comments from the commission that you can take those comments, put them together, and take it to city council. The emphasis on the city council presentation being that there's already a lot of large companies outside the city limits.
Yes, sir.
And that needs to come into compliance before we can really start hammering down on a lot of things. Okay? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Yes,
Thank you
sir.
for that presentation. It was good. Thank you all. All right, moving right along now. The next item that we have is public hearing and recommendation of an ordinance for the voluntary annexation and initial zoning of M1 on a tract of land totaling 15.556 acres, more or less, as described by Meets and Bounds, known as the Annexation Tract 1, Emerald River View Tract. It's located on FM 1472 and southwest of Verde Road.
Yes, Commissioner, Mr. Vidauri?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Mr. Director. So next slide, please. General overview. The applicant is Emerald River Development Limited. The engineer of record is Porras Nance Engineering. Approximately 15.56 acres located south of FM 1472 and southwest of Verde. The proposed initial zoning is M1 and the proposed use is industrial. General location. Aerial view. Aerial view is zoning. Comprehensive plan. Their site plan, and just to give a little bit of background, they're proposing approximately 135,500 of industrial space with a plan built out of to 2024, and this is part of the Sapphire Industrial Park Phase 2. Staff supports the proposed annexation and initial zoning, and while the initial zoning is not in conformance with the future land use map of the comprehensive plan designation for the area, however, the surrounding areas are residential in use, and the initial zoning will not adversely impact conditions in the surrounding properties or neighborhood. And the proposed motion.
Okay, very good. This is a public hearing. Is anybody on the phone who wishes to speak in favor or against this annexation?
There is a bit of a lag, as we explained previously. So if you could speak with the engineer, and if anybody calls in, we will alert you.
All right. I don't know who the engineer of record on this is.
The engineer is Porras Nance.
All right. If you can advise him if he wants to speak on this item.
Wayne, there you
Yes.
go, Wayne.
Yes. Hello, Mr. Chairman. This is Wayne.
Hello, Wayne. Good.
Excellent. Listen, we're in agreement with staff on this, so we hope that you all support it as well. This is an extension of an existing industrial master plan, just moving the city limits out a little bit to coincide with the master plan limits. We appreciate your favorable consideration and take any questions that you have.
Very good. Thank you. Do we have anybody else who wishes to speak in favor or against this public hearing annexation?
No, sir, we have no others on the line.
Very good. Then what are the wishes of the commission?
Motion to recommend approval.
We have a motion. Dueñas seconds a motion. All those who are not in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. With none heard, motion carries.
And
Next item.
That motion was by Commissioner Dovalina, correct?
That's correct. Commissioner Dovalina, second by Commissioner Dueñas. All right. Next item is a public hearing recommendation of the volunteer annexation and initial zoning of M1 on a tract of land totaling, is that 2.7904 acres? And it is known as Annexation Tract 2, 528 tract. It's located on FM 1472 and southwest corner of Verde Road.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For the record, the overview, the applicant is 528 LLC. The engineer of record is Porras Nance Engineering. Approximately 2.79 acres located southwest of Verde Road and south of 1472 with a proposed initial zoning of M1 and proposed use of industrial. General location. This is the aerial view. This is the aerial view, and you can see the surrounding zoning is surrounded by M1 and light industrial. This is the future land use, and it does identify it as low density residential. This is the site plan for the area. And while it is part of the Sapphire Industrial Park Phase 2, it is planned for total build out in 2024. However, there are no actual building pads or right-of-way planned in this particular section of the project. Staff supports the proposed annexation of the initial zoning. The initial zoning, while not in conformance with the future land use map of the comprehensive plan, the surrounding areas are industrial in use, and the initial zoning will not adversely impact the conditions of the surrounding area and the proposed motion.
Okay. The engineer of record is Wayne Nance.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead. It's a public hearing.
Yes, sir. We support staff on this one. We hope that you, the commission does as well. And we're here to take any questions that you all have.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Nance on the commission? All right. Does anybody else on the line who wishes to speak for or against this particular annexation?
No, sir, we have no other.
All right. What are the wishes of the commission?
I'll make a motion to approve, Commissioner Lugo.
Commissioner Lugo. Is there a-
Dueñas, second, Chairman.
Dueñas, second. All those who are not in favor of the motion to approve signify by saying aye. None heard, motion carries. Thank you. The next item is a public hearing recommending the ordinance on the voluntary annexation and initial zoning of B3 on a tract of land totaling 9.961 acres. And it is known as Annexation Tract 3, EMA Commercial Tract located on Loop 20 and north of East Delmar Boulevard.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For the record, the applicant is EMA Commercial Investments, LLC. The engineer of record is Premier Engineering and Surveying, approximately 9.96 acres located east of Loop 20 and north of Delmar Boulevard. And the proposed initial zoning is B3 for multifamily use. General location, aerial view, the surrounding zoning. You have R1 over to the west, and you have B1 and B1 and B4 over to the south. On the comprehensive plan, this area is identified as low density residential with light commercial and heavy commercial to the south. Here is the proposed site plan. The applicant proposes approximately 240 multifamily units over 10 buildings. The plan is to build 60 units in the first year, 90 units in the second year, and the final 90 units in the third year with a proposed build out from 3 to 5 years. Staff supports the proposed annexation and initial zoning. While the initial zoning is not in conformance with the future land use plan, there is light commercial and heavy commercial immediately across the street, and the initial zoning will not adversely impact the conditions of surrounding properties or neighborhood. And the proposed motion.
Okay. Well, this is a public hearing. Anybody, the engineer of record, wishes to speak on the item?
Eduardo Gutierrez, for the record, we're supporting the item. We agree with staff, and we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anybody in the commission have any questions for Mr. Gutierrez? All right. Is there anybody else on the line who wishes to speak for or against the annexation?
No, sir.
Commissioner, this is Chief Dominguez with the Laredo Fire Department.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Chief.
I just wanted to go on record. I know that this will be dealt with once they come in with their permits to the building and the fire department. But we just want to go on record noting that with the layout they currently have, the entire build out, they're going to need a second remote exit for this property. And like I said, this is it will be dealt with. This should obviously will not hinder this annexation, and it'll be dealt with when the plans are submitted. But we just want to go on record just that we did bring it up in as early as possible so that the applicants will be aware that they will need a remote exit because of the total number of units for the total development. And that's all.
Okay. Thank you for the comment, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. All right. Does anybody else have any comments or any questions? With none heard, what are the wishes of the commission? I'm sorry.
Motion to recommend approval, Dovalina.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second Dominguez.
Dominguez seconds. All those who are not in favor of the motion to approve signify by saying aye. With none heard, motion carries. Thank you. The next item, public hearing recommending an ordinance for the volunteer annexation, initial zoning of M1 on a tract of land totaling 0.09 acres. And this is known as annexation tract 4, Marquez tract, located north of FM 1472 and west of Copper Mine Road.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, the applicant is J.J. Ruiz Land Surveying. The engineer of record is Premier Engineering and Surveying. I'm sorry, we do have a misprint there. The applicant is Maria de la Luz Marquez, and the GR of record is Pewa Engineering Consulting. Approximately 0.09 acres located north of FM 1472 and west of Copper Mine Road. The proposed initial zoning is M1 for this development. Proposed use industrial. General location. Aerial view, the surrounding zoning. I'm sorry, that was the comprehensive plan. It identifies this area as light industrial and the surrounding zoning of M1 and AG. And this is the proposed site plan. As you can see, it's approximately 0.09 acres out of a larger 2.5 acre tract. This tract the entire tract has already received final plat approval from the commission and is to be used for a trucking yard and will be developed here shortly. Now, staff supports the proposed annexation and initial zoning. The initial zoning is in conformance with the future land use map for the comprehensive plan, and the initial zoning will not adversely impact the conditions surrounding properties that is predominantly industrial in nature and the proposed motion.
Okay. Do we have the engineer of record on?
Mr. Castillo, you're muted.
Mr. Chairman, Commission, and staff, my name is Oscar Castillo with Pewa Consulting, representing the owner, and we're for this annexation and here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Anybody else who wishes to speak for or against? For or against? Do we have anybody on the phone?
No, sir, we don't.
All right, what are the wishes of the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to close the public meeting and recommend approval.
We have a motion. A motion by Jorge Dominguez and a second by Abby Lugo.
Second, Dueñas, Chairman.
Yes. We got a second by, was it Commissioner Lugo, right?
It's Commissioner Dueñas.
Dueñas, second.
Yes, I'm sorry. Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. All those who are not in favor of the motion to approve signify by saying aye. None heard, motion carries. Thank you. Next item. Amending the zoning ordinance of the city of Laredo by rezoning approximately 0.61 acre tract of land out of portion 14, that's tract 56. Guajardo Original Grantee located southeast of People Boulevard and Port Texas Drive from R1MH to R2. All right.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Vanessa Guerra from your planning staff. The applicant in this case is WW Escondido LP, Chris Arthur, owner. PUA Consulting, Oscar Castillo is a representative. This property is a 0.61 acre tract located southeast of People's Boulevard and Fort Texas Drive. The request is from an R1 MH to an R2. Proposed use is townhomes. 20 letters were sent out and none were received either for or against. This is an overview. It's located in North Laredo. This is an aerial view. It's currently vacant. A street view. This is your zoning. It abuts, it's currently designated R1MH. It abuts R1MH with an R1A to the south. It's designated medium density residential, and it abuts low density residential to the east with more medium density to the west. And staff supports the proposed zone change. It does conform to the comprehensive plan's medium density designation for this area, and the proposed residential use is compatible with the single family uses already present in the area. Just to note, this case will require a PUD overlay and the approval of a site plan.
Oh.
And there's the proposed motion.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Anybody who wishes to speak in favor or against? Do we have the engineer of record on, or whoever's handling this case?
Mr. Castillo, you need to unmute yourself.
Mr. Chairman, Commission, and staff, this is Oscar Castillo with Pego Consulting, representing the owner, and we're for the rezoning and here to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from the commission members on this case? All right, is there anybody on the phone who would like to speak for or against this?
No, sir.
Nobody on the public hearing. All right, sir, if that is the case, then what is the wishes of the commission?
I motion to support staff and approve the rezoning.
This is Ana.
Second, Dominguez.
Dominguez seconds. Ana Villarreal made the motion. Dominguez seconds the motion. All those who are not in favor of the motion to approve, signify by saying aye. With none heard, motion carries. Next item, amending the zoning ordinance.
Thank you.
By authorizing the issuance of a conditional use permit for a bar in microbrewery in condo units 9, 10, 11, 12 only on lot 1 and 2, block 1, Kimberly Plaza subdivision located 4820 McPherson Road. All right.
The owner is Juan El Garza, David Garza is the applicant, and Miguel Gomez is the representative. This is for, the property is located at 4820 McPherson Road, and the request is for a CUP for a bar microbrewery, and it will be including a food truck court. The 15 letters were sent out, and one was received in favor and one was received in opposition. This is an overview. Again, it's located on McPherson Road. An aerial view. This is a street view. This is your zoning. It's designated B3 and it abuts R1 and R2. It's currently designated by the future land use as neighborhood mixed use. And there's some low density residential to the north and more medium density to the east and west. Staff supports the proposed CUP. It does meet the location requirement of being located along a major arterial. And while it's not in conformance with the comprehensive plan's designation for this area, we don't anticipate it to negatively affect the surrounding area. The proposed use does complement the other commercial uses on site. Again, although it does not meet the distance requirements for B4 type uses from our districts, and the parking doesn't conform to the code, but the hours of operation for the existing and proposed use are staggered, so we don't anticipate a spillover parking. Again, the conditions are typical and for the proposed use, and they're contained in the staff report.
So I just want to make one note on this, that while there may be some areas of concern because it's so close to residential, those are addressed in the conditions of this conditional use permit, which the applicant is in agreement with, and they can speak to that.
And there's a proposed motion, recommend approval or denial.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Anybody who wishes to speak in favor? In favor.
Yes, thank you. For the record, Miguel Gomez on behalf of the owner. We support the item and we are in agreement with the conditions that staff has put forward. And we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Does anybody in the commission have any questions for Mr. Gomez?
I have a comment.
How are they gonna deal with the noise issue? If you have a truck court and you're gonna have probably sound systems and things going.
We had that same concern and we've limited it outside. There will only be ambient music that cannot be perceivable by adjacent properties. It can't, the wording is it has to be imperceptible from adjacent properties. And live music can only be inside the portion that's inside. So there can be no live music outside in the area where the food trucks will be.
Okay. I have a question. Your parking requirement was 33 spaces, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you're short about 4 or 5?
Well, 5 more would be required because of the food trucks and also the space that they're going to take up. So in total, 37 would be needed, and they have 26 spaces. But the overall complex itself has 63, and the hours of operation for the ones that aren't. In other words, not all the uses in that complex, that commercial complex, are using the parking in the evening, and so that frees up a lot of the parking in the whole complex, more than they have on the specific lot.
So there's a corn place here and there's another restaurant, Suarez. You mean to tell me those guys are closed at night or what?
No,
They are,
I'm
but-
sorry, go ahead.
They aren't, but there's a print shop and
Yeah.
a salon and others that have some available parking at night.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, make a
Yes,
quick
sir.
comment. I drive very often on that area, and I've noticed that, as you mentioned, that Suarez restaurant. There's Suarez restaurant, and then they have a meat shop, and then they have Obregon's there, and there's a lot of traffic at night in that area, that particular corner. I do have a big concern. That area is surrounded to the, looking at the front, to the left, you have apartments, multi-family apartments, and then to your right, you have Chaparral subdivision there. And even though it is creating a problem right now with the parking, I would like to see if before we approve this, we make a study as to the exact amount of parkings that are available. Because the way I see it right now, Kirby, and no offense, I think that this is only an assumption, not the reality of the parking that are being used. I drive there and there's a lot of cars. They're there double and triple parking, not only saturating the parking itself, but even saturating the exits. Even the way the parking lot it's set right now, it is completely out of contents on it. It's not correctly set. The way all the parkings are set in there, it creates a problem with the mobility of the vehicles. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that the bar would be good, provided that we have a backup, an analysis, something simple that would actually will give the commission the backup to approve this CUP. And I think that would be my recommendation to wait until we have the correct answer from staff. Not an assumption, but an actual analysis of the parking itself.
Kirby, has anybody, I know that there was an analysis done, and I'm gonna remember this from some time ago. I don't remember what the name of the business was that wanted to go in there. But there was another business that wanted to go in there, and they had to do a comprehensive study of the parking because parking was an issue. And I think that's something we really need to take a good look at. Did you guys do that analysis on parking requirements? And I don't know what the parking requirement is for the whole development, but I don't know if you guys have actually taken a good look at what's going on there. And like Commissioner Dominguez said, the last thing we need is obviously to have business who is going to be successful fail because the parking situation is not working. And that's just a question that we're bringing up. Is there an analysis? You guys look at that? Did y'all look at that very carefully, or?
Yes, sir, we did. We did analysis of the supply that was available, not the demand, but of the supply. And it's our determination or our recommendation that parking won't be an issue, that they have enough. One of the things we recommended to the applicant was that they secure a parking agreement with their neighbors to formalize that.
Okay.
But the recommendation you'll typically see us follow is that we want the private sector to take care of that issue. We don't want to be in the business of requiring, we want to look at minimums, and we're with Recode looking at even lowering those parking minimums. We want the private sector to make those determinations. It should be the risk of the business to determine if they have enough parking, and if it doesn't work for them, then they have to relocate. But the business owners here, they're willing to make that investment. So I think that's the best test that they have enough parking is because they're here and they want to do this. If they didn't have enough, it wouldn't be good for their business, in other words. So
If I may respond to that, Mr. Chairman, real quick. I agree with you, Kirby, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but the layout of the parking itself is the problem. They might have a lot of parkings there, and they might be enough. It's just that the layout is awful there. Now, what I would recommend to Mr. Gomez and Mr. Chairman, that if we can table it for the next meeting, that we can have a layout of the existing parking and which area is the one that is going to be dedicated to that particular brewery.
Commissioner Villarreal, if I can respond to that, to say that what we're concerned about when we look at parking is, will there be spill out into the neighborhood? Because that is the typical, that's the concern. And our determination is no, that won't be the case. And I think the best reflection of does the business have enough parking? Again, it's the business owner here willing to make that investment. And if they didn't have enough parking, it would affect their business. So they're certainly aware of that issue, and it's something we've spoken to them about. But I don't believe it's not going to create an issue with the neighborhood, and that is our primary concern with parking. Given, you can see it's a commercial complex, so if somebody would park in the neighborhood, they have to walk quite a bit on a busy road, which typically we don't see.
If I may respond to Commissioner Dominguez.
Is the parking lot striped? Is the parking lot striped?
It's striped, but it might be old. I'm sure we could restripe it as needed for the building permit and the requirements by the building department and the fire department. It has stripes, but we can do definitely a better job.
If you go back to the picture that you're showing, go back to the picture where the cars are parked. You've got cars parked in front of the building where you're suggesting you're going to put your business, and then you've got cars parked in the other way, and then you have that platform that used to be the old filling station, and you've got cars parked in there. So I'm not sure how many parking spaces are within the complex that you're intending to occupy. So it would be nice to see some sort of design that we could determine how many parking spaces or in the square that is
Kirby.
designated as your location.
Excuse me, Kirby, I just emailed you the site plan, if you wanted to show that.
Okay.
I have a quick question for staff. Have there been any letters in opposition? And also, what formula did you guys use to determine the amount of parking that was going to be needed?
Yes, Ms. Villarreal, if we could just make sure we've answered Mr. Dovalina's question here, and then we'll move on and show you that. Commissioner Dovalina? You're muted.
You have 26 spaces in the design and then you have circulation arrows so that the entrance would be changed from what it currently is to where closer to where the structure is that's in the parking area. Is that correct?
Mr. Gomez?
Okay, I didn't understand the question. We're not changing the flow of the traffic, though. Can you repeat the question?
You're showing the parking in toward the street. So I assume that in order to access that parking, you're gonna have to come off of McPherson to get into the 4 spaces that you have on the north side of the property or on the east side of the property of Print Express. And then you've got a vacant area, and then you have 3 more spaces that you have. And so that circulation will only allow 4 cars to access directly from McPherson. Everything else is going to have to go to where you have the arrows, and then you have an additional 23 spaces in that area. And so you said you're going to be short 37 spaces. And so I guess my question is, where are the 37 spaces?
Well, it'll be used from the shared parking where the parking spaces that are not numbered next to where it says existing building.
So it's going to be a free-for-all?
It'll be a share parking space. First come, first serve.
Okay, well, where would you put the food trucks?
The food trucks would be next to the actual unit where the brewery is happening, right there in that space.
Excuse me, if Kirby, if you scroll down, the site plan with the food trucks is shown.
Okay, but
So you're going to use up the spaces with the food trucks?
Yeah, and you guys,
and the circulation as well?
wait a minute, you got hidden parking. Hidden parking requires 24 feet to get out, so it's not going to work.
I think, Mr. Chairman, that we should ask Mr. Gomez to bring us a proposed layout of the parkings, not the assumed, but actually the real parking that are going to be used and that are going to be shared. And like I said, I don't have a problem recommending approval, provided that we can actually have something to show the community why we approved it. I mean, we have residential all over the place. And were there any people against it, Kirby? Vanessa?
Yes, we had one against.
Okay. So.
And Commissioner Ana Villarreal, did we answer your questions before we move on to Commissioner?
Yes, you answered the question about the letter against, and I just want to say that, I love the idea of the brewing. I feel like even though it does not meet the distance to a residential use, we want to try to promote these kinds of places where you walk to it instead of drive. But it just seems that the owner's trying to do too much in just this one lot, or not even a lot, it's a unit, which is also not labeled. In the conditions, it says it's a couple of units, and in the side map, it doesn't really show how many. So I'm not sure if they're asking for the whole strip or just that one portion that's in purple. But I feel like adding the food trucks is just, you're adding more program, which is gonna call for much more parking. So I would feel comfortable with considering the limited amount of parking spaces that they have if they would only have the brewing. But they're adding food, which if you combine it with brewing, you are pretty much trying to provide a space where people will hang out. So that really doesn't free any of those spaces. It's not, doesn't look like it will be the kind of place where you just go order food and leave. So that's just my thought. I feel like it's, I'm not sure what formula was used to determine that it will be fine in terms of parking, but it doesn't look like it will work in my mind.
Kirby, did you want me to go over the parking formulas, the calculations?
Only if the commissioners want to go into that detail.
I don't think that that's the issue. I think the issue right now is, like I said, you got hidden parking and then you got food trucks parked. You know, one of the food trucks is taking up 2 of your parking spaces. So you drop that from 26 to, 24. The circulation is another concern that everybody has on that particular property right now. And those are, like Anna said, I think, maybe the brewery by itself might work, but once you start adding the food trucks to it, you're going to have people walking around, milling around, and it just seems very tight. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I want to
suggest, if I could suggest that you can ask the applicant, you can recommend changes to the conditions. So one of those changes could be no food trucks, or you could also, as Commissioner, the other commissioner suggested, you could table this and allow the applicant to work with staff to look at an alternative.
If I could address the commission real quick, and we perhaps we could table the item so you guys can see a better parking layout. But the food truck microbrewery, we didn't want to. We're asking for a bar only because microbrewery is not really a conditional use permit, I guess, to answer Commissioner Villarreal, or at least I didn't understand it that way. So that's the reason we're asking for a bar, permit for a bar. But the intent is to have a microbrewery, not necessarily a bar. So I don't know if that answers your question, Ms. Villarreal. But if there's any doubt, we will be happy to provide a better parking layout so that the commission understands what we're trying to do here.
I think that's the best interest of everybody. I think the commission all has that kind of question. So if you would be amenable to table the item, I think that would be, something that would work, and, make sure you get your layout totally, squared away with staff and everything where it works for everybody. Are you agreeing to that, Mr. Gomez? To table the item?
Yes, we kindly ask to table the item, please.
All right, sir. Thank you. Do we have a motion to table?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing and table the item, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion.
Dovalina second.
Dovalina seconds. All those who are not in favor of the motion to table the item, please signify by saying aye. With none heard, motion carries. Next item.
Thank you.
The zoning ordinance. Yes, sir. Amending the zoning ordinance map of the city of Laredo by rezoning approximately 2.002 acres. And this is located east of Ejido Avenue and Zacatecas Street from R1A to AG. All right.
The applicant is the American Electric Power Service Corporation. John M. Garcia is the representative. The property is a 2.002 acre tract located east of Ejido and Zacatecas Street. The zone change request is from R1A to AG. It's a down zone. And the down zone is for an electrical substation, specifically the Santo Nino substation. 14 letters were sent out and none were received either in support or in opposition. As you can see, this is located in South Laredo. There's an overview. This is a street view. It's currently zoned to R1A and surrounded by R3 and R2. And it's designated medium density residential. And staff supports it's not in conformance with the comprehensive plan, but not anticipated to negatively affect the surrounding area. And it is compatible with surrounding uses and zones. And there's the proposed motion.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Anybody who wishes to speak in favor? Do we have the engineer or whoever's representing this case?
Yes, sir. This is Juan Ludwig, and I'm from CDS Murray, and I'm speaking on behalf of AEP. First of all, I appreciate the chairman and commissioners allowing me to speak tonight. Basically, what we're proposing to do is constructing a new 138 kV substation, and it's really an expansion of the substation that is to the north of the area. And ultimately, the reason this is critical is because we're interested in improving the reliability as well as to account for the growth based on the expansion in the area. So if anyone has any questions that they would like to for me to address, I'd be more than happy to answer. Now, we do have some questions with respect to the zoning, and we also submitted a preliminary plat concurrently with this. Should I go ahead and maintain these as separate items, Kirby?
We're currently going to just listen to this is a zoning case.
Yes, sir.
We're going to listen to the zoning case at this point, and that's what we're listening to right now. It is going from from a R1A to an AG. Strictly a zoning case we're listening to at this point.
Yes, sir.
All right. So this is a public hearing. Thank you for your comments. Do we have anybody else who would want to speak for or against the zone change?
No, sir, we don't.
All right. Is anybody in the commission have any questions on the zone change?
I'm just curious, do power substations require agricultural zones?
Well,
yes, they would.
Huh?
They would either, electrical substations either go in M1 or AG. So it's either the M1 zone or the AG zone.
So there currently is an existing substation probably within feet of where the gentleman is talking about adding the other power station. How is that zone?
I'm not sure.
This is to the side of a retention pond that sits out in that area. And I believe this property used to be the Lara track. Is that correct?
Mr. Dovalina, if I'm not sure what property you're referring to, it could be that there is a property nearby with a substation. If that's the case and the zoning's not correct, it would be legal non-conforming. If, however, this lot has substation or any kind of existing, to expand that use would still require that they come into compliance and get the proper zoning, even if there's something already there that has to do with substations. So when you have a legal non-conforming status, you can't expand the use until you get the proper zoning.
So my question is, do substations require ag use?
They require
Ag
either
zone.
ag or M1.
So I would hope that we would be with the same zone as whatever is existing in that location. And it's been there for years. Just a thought.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions?
Just real quick, Mr. Chairman. We already had other items previously, probably a couple of years back, for a substation along Loop 20. And we granted the AG. I think there would be in the best interest not to discriminate and approve the AG for this particular substation. It is It is good for the community. We have a tremendous growth in that area. I represent that area, and I feel that this is good for the community and for Laredo itself. And I'll be willing to close the public hearing and make a motion to approve the zone change, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we got a motion on the floor to approve. Is there a second?
So Alina second.
So Alina seconds it. All those who are not in favor of the motion to approve signify by saying aye. None heard, motion carries. Thank you. The next item, consideration of the following preliminary plats and preliminary replats. Item A, preliminary consideration of AEP Santo Niño Substation, Block 1, Lot 1. The intent is electrical substation. All right.
For the record, the applicant is John Garcia on behalf of AEP Real Estate Agent Lead. The engineer of record is Juan A. Ludwig. Approximately 2.0 acres located south of Ejido Avenue, directly between Zacatecas Street. The zoning for this one lot development is currently R1A. General location, aerial view, street view, the proposed plat, comments from planning and traffic, and the proposed motion.
Okay. Do we have the engineer of record? Yes, we do. Can we have him on?
Yes, sir. This is Juan Ludwig again. We are in agreement with everything, and for the exception of one. And what we'd like to do is respectfully request, there is a request for a cul-de-sac to be installed there on the east side of the substation, which is the end of Zacatecas. One of the concerns that we have is that we're constructing an electrical substation to the south. This is a public utility, which will require transformers, breakers, and what have you. These are all components that are required for the electrical substation. Typically, your substations are anywhere in the vicinity of 250 feet by 250 feet. Unfortunately, in this particular location, based on our electrical footprint, it's not feasible to incorporate a 100-foot turnaround as requested by the planners. And therefore, we're respectfully requesting that this be removed as a condition.
All right. Okay.
I think, Mr. Chairman, that building a cul-de-sac on the private property and granting it to the city of Laredo will create probably a hangout for some of the young people there in the evenings, and that will instead of being a something good for the community, it might be adverse for the substation itself. I was also wondering why they were asking for the turnaround there, being that substations are self-contained, if I may make that comment.
Correct.
And fence it. So we want to keep the public as far as possible from either from the fence or from the substation itself. At one time, we saw the need for a portable or a mobile substation along Delmar. If you remember, we had an issue during the real hot weather. Now, eliminating or taking that piece of land from the lot itself probably will limit AEP on in case they need to bring a mobile station there to use that particular area for us to, if we do the turnaround, there's no use for it. It will be only a hangout, what I think is a hangout for young people. I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm just saying that it would be better use not to have it there. See, and again, I represent that area, that district, and I feel that we should allow the substation with its land to be used appropriately for the substation itself, which is in dire need for that area. That area is growing tremendously, as I mentioned before. So holding that the construction of the substation will probably not be a good motion. So if anybody else has a comment there, but I'm ready to close the public comment. And
let me see if anybody else has any comments. I mean,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have a question, Kirby. Why are we recommending this turnaround on a dead-end street that's been there for years?
Well, the fact that it's been there for years at a piece of property that had nothing on it is a little different than developing a substation where we potentially could have city services accessing there and needing that turnaround for larger vehicles, especially emergency vehicles. AEP does not, when you say it's self-contained, if there were to be an event here, an issue here, such as a fire where a fire truck needed to access this area, turnaround is important for emergency vehicles and for other services that might be the case. So it's something that we require when we have development, and it's something I think in this situation as well is needed. We heard from the applicant that it would be difficult, but I did not hear from the applicant it'd be impossible to put a turnaround in.
No, I beg your pardon. It would be extremely, I'm not sure how feasible it would be with the configuration that we've got. And I did want to clarify, these are self-contained units. One of the things that we take into consideration whenever we're constructing these substations is that they're typically installed in locations where there's a high demand. In this particular situation, what we want to do is there is currently a substation to the north that's approximately 30 years old. And as Commissioner George had indicated, one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to maintain that level of reliability, and therefore constructing this substation as requested. This is an electrical substation, so the last thing that we're going to want is for the fire department to go in and start doing anything to it. There is access on a Gila Road that is readily available, but unfortunately in this particular case, we're so constricted that we're even having to incorporate retaining walls. Typically, we don't like doing that, but because we're such a constricted footprint, there's not even room for us to construct the pad efficiently and economically. So everything's going to be constricted, and because of the location, that's why this electric substation was sited in this particular location. But fire departments are typically, we typically discuss with them during the design phase and make it abundantly clear that the last thing that they want to do is be near an electrical substation when there's a fire and start putting water on it.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
This is John Garcia.
I'm very familiar with this track. After seeing the aerial and seeing where the old substation is, and you can see the detention pond that I was talking about. Zacatecas has been closed here forever. There were 2 mobile homes on that property. I tried to purchase that land many years ago for the city in order to extend Zacatecas, and it did belong to the Lara family, and I agree that there shouldn't be a turnaround or a cul-de-sac at that location. The reason that the power station has to go in is that the distribution within that zone or that area is not adequate. And when that happens, you end up having outages and other things. And so this is their attempt to remedy this situation.
Very good. Very good. I concur with what you're saying. There's a lot of growth going on in the south. I think AP is trying to stay ahead of the curve by providing the service. And, you know, as we all know, the situation we had here a few weeks ago with the outages, I think this is only something that can help. It's not going to help immediately, but if they don't get it going right away, you know, it's going to take even longer to minimize any potential outages in the south. We all know that there's been outages in the south due to lack of additional infrastructure by AEP, and I think that this is something that's very important. Larry, you and I both know that Zacatecas, and we tried to purchase that because I remember specifically the same thing. We couldn't do it. This street has been closed for years. To make a demand of a cul-de-sac, in my opinion, I treat these things as, in today's world, a security risk to leave anybody close by to be lingering and seeing what they can do. We got to make sure that we don't allow anybody to get as close as possible to this substation. Ejido obviously has got a high traffic, so I don't have a problem with that. But I don't believe that cul-de-sac is needed. And so that's my thought too. Does anybody else have any thought on that? Because if not, I'm ready for a motion.
I'm ready for a motion, Mr. Chairman, to close the public hearing.
All right.
And make a motion to approve according to staff recommendation, but remove the item number 4, the comment number 4.
All right.
I'm sure that the engineer will be happy to comply with the rest.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Dovalina, second.
We have a second by Commissioner Lovelina. All those who are not in favor of the motion to approve, signify by saying aye. None heard, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the
Thank you.
next items, number 9 and number 10, these are all final consideration. And item 10 is the model subdivision compliance. Can I have a motion so that we can hear these together? Can I have a motion from somebody to hear them together, or do y'all want to hear them individually?
Motion
I'll make a motion to hear them jointly.
I'll second.
And we have a second. All those in-
Dominguez.
Okay, Dominguez, all those who are not in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. None heard, motion carries. Can we have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve in a second.
Yes.
Yeah, seconds. All those who are not in favor of the motion to approve signify by saying aye. None heard, motion carries. Director's report.
Yes, sir. Just want to make a few comments. One, as you may have noticed, the annexations are back rather quickly. You know, in the past, those have just come up once a year. But as you may recall, we brought to you a recommendation for an ordinance change, and then we took it to council and they agreed to change the ordinance so that we can have 2 cycles a year of annexations. At the same time, we required some additional information from them. So you may have noticed this time around there were site plans and more details, and you saw the consequence of that today. Instead of just coming in as B3 and you didn't know what they were planning, you saw that multifamily development that came in, and that gave the fire department the ability to give everybody a heads up that, hey, just so you know, you're going to need to find a way to have a second access here. And so those are the kind of things requiring more information allows us to do, is everybody can do better planning ahead of time, utilities, fire, and the other departments from the city. So just wanted to point that out. And also, as always, wanted to say thank you for your service. I remind the public who may be watching every time that you don't get paid for your service on the Planning Commission. You do it as a volunteer because you love your community. And we want to thank you every time for the time that you give in this meeting and the time you give outside of it to prepare. So thank you, everyone, for participating. We appreciate your time.
All right, thank you all very much. Motion to adjourn. And we'll see you guys later. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Have a good evening.